Alrighty, let's do it. G'day guys. Welcome once again to the Tripod, where we break down every single NRL game every week from a punting perspective. This week we'll be breaking down round 24 in the NRL, only 2 weeks left before finals time, and off the back of 2 winning weekends, so looking to continue that throughout week 24. Jacob, how are you, buddy?
I'm good, thanks, mate. You say off the back of 2 winning weekends in a row. I feel like we don't need to get hung up on that. We're playing the long game here. Whether we win, or lose in any given week, the important thing is for the season we're up. And I want to, just say again, we're not a subscription service. We're not trying to market our tips or make our tips sound any better than they are. What we really want to do is grow the number of people that tune into the pod. We appreciate those that do. What we really do every single week is try and find as many 50-50 tips across the NRL that we think win at 60%.
Yep.
So we deep dive, we find as many as we can. If we like a game more than another game, we usually find more picks. And you guys have seen the picks we do. But not only do we give you those picks, we're here every week to explain why. And you don't have to bet every single one. We don't really mind how many people bet, each and every tip or just some of them. But if you can take something away, if you agree with the reasoning or, the results are there to be seen, that we're doing something right. So we hope that people can, at least everyone can get some information out of the podcast every week.
Oh, absolutely. And even like you said, just even listening, and if you're a casual punter or whatever, even if you don't punt, the best you're going to get out of it is maybe get some tips that you can put on for your office tipping comp or whatever. So you'll be able to see what sides we like, and generally we are on the right side. But let's get started off. Thursday night, we've got the Cowboys laying 2.5 points, hosting the Canterbury Bulldogs. 36.5 points is the total. Well, a few weeks ago, this looked like an absolute dog shit matchup, but it actually is a little bit of an intriguing one, especially from a punting perspective, I guess. The Bulldogs, like we've said last week, 6 of their last 8 and playing top 8 level football throughout those 8 weeks, that's for sure. And are still a miracle's chance of making the top 8. And if you're in our group, you would have seen a few people putting up multis of, exactly the results that need to happen for the Bulldogs to make the 8. And I think you're getting around 600 to 1 odds. So that's a fun flyer. But this one for me, I know that the Bulldogs have been playing better over the last 8 weeks. And if we're betting just on form, I would take the Bulldogs here. But the thing is, this is the Cowboys' last home game. They have been fairly putrid down the back end of the stretch. But like I said, it's their last home game. They do historically have a fairly strong home field advantage, usually give about 3 points. So, this line's pretty much telling us that the Bulldogs are the slightly better team than the Cowboys. I would agree with that. However, I do expect a good effort out of the Cowboys at home. So at this point, I don't really love a side. I do, however, like the under. I know we have no best bets as of now, but you look at the Bulldogs throughout this last 8-game stretch, I think maybe 6 or 7 of those games have gone under, and especially, when they've actually won the game, it's gone under by a wide margin. And we've said that the Cowboys do struggle in attack. I think both of these teams a little bit anemic in attack and solid defense, and I do expect both teams to actually give 100% effort in this one, despite both of them basically being out of the hunt for the 8. So, although it's 36.5, it seems low. I just can't see either team getting to 20 in my mind. So, I do like the under.
Yeah, another thing that a few weeks ago when you looked at this match, you would have seen was that the Bulldogs were 10.5 point underdogs.
Yes,
and that was pointed out in our group. And a bunch of lads are holding Bulldogs plus 10.5, which is a lot better than Bulldogs plus 2.5, which you 100%. Can get now. So if it was still 10.5, we'd be grabbing that as a best bet. But I'm with you, and I like the unders too. Now, they've won 6 of their last 8, and correct me if I'm wrong, we do this live, so we could be fact-checked live.
Sure.
I think all 6 wins were against teams in the top 8. So they're absolutely giant killers, the Bulldogs. So I almost wonder, has this become a flat spot where they're playing a team that they're kind of, expected to be able to compete with, and they're not, slaying someone or spoiling somebody's season. And it is an important game for the Cowboys. Last ever game at, the old Dairy Farmers Stadium. They're retiring Matt Scott's jersey for the night. There will be a tribute to him. I could definitely see the Cowboys getting the rub of the green at home here. I get what you mean that, both these sides are grinded out type of teams, but the total is low, so we haven't grabbed it yet because it's quite low anyway. We don't see it necessarily getting any lower than 36, but if it's beautiful conditions, on a Thursday night, might tick up. Remus Smith is out, but Ockenbaugh's a good replacement, so I kind of feel like the line is about right.
Yeah, and that's fair enough. And like you said, people jumped on at 10.5. I think they moved the line to 5.5, and now it's 2.5, which is it's fairly a reflection of how the Bulldogs have been playing. I'll switch over to the comments for a second. Jeremy, if you can just explain what you mean there. And he says, any reason why you guys never tip -12 under when the line is small? I'm not exactly sure what you mean there. Maybe you can explain it, and we'll try and get to it after the next few games. Next up, we got the Warriors plus 4.5 points hosting the Rabbitohs. 40.5 points is the total. Well, you just never know what the Warriors team is going to serve up, do you? I mean, they beat Manly in, what was one of the most surprising games of the round. Then they lose by 24. 24 last week, 36 the week before, and have looked pretty putrid. The Warriors might be cooked. They might just be absolutely cooked for the season, and they might not put in another good effort. If there's one spot that they might put in a good effort, it is their last home game against a good team like the Rabbitohs, with Nikorima coming back into the side most likely. Now, the thing here is, I think even if the Warriors put in a good effort, I still feel good about the Rabbitohs winning this game. But I also think that there's like a 50% or maybe even more chance that the Warriors are just completely done for the season. And if that's the case, the Rabbitohs do actually just roll all over them. You're getting Sam Burgess back, you get Alex Johnson back. I understand he's not playing at fullback, but Dewey's been back there doing a decent enough job for the last few weeks. And you get Cole Turner back as well. So you've got a pretty much full-strength Rabbitohs lineup.
If you're going to talk about who's back, Ethan Lowe.
Yes.
I mean, do people remember Origin 3?
That's true.
Not bad having a guy like this off the bench.
And you know what? Origin 3 was that was his stepping stone, because I thought he was an average player up until then, and he's really taken off since then. That was not a one-off performance, and he's really rolled that into the regular season. Obviously, you're missing James Roberts. I think that getting all those additions like Burgess and Johnson, I think that certainly makes this Rabbitohs team a better team. And like I've said before, when this Rabbitohs team is full strength or close to, they are one of the better teams in the comp. I just think at this line of 4.5, if the Warriors don't show up, the Rabbits roll all over them. And even if the Warriors do show up, I think there's a fair chance, or better than 50% chance, that the Rabbitohs cover this line. So I like the Rabbits here.
Yeah, now, it was out-and-out warfare in Brisbane a week ago, so that's a brutal match to get through, and now to, jump on a plane and go to New Zealand. But I feel, you just mentioned 4 quality, important parts of their team they add in. I think that re-energizes the squad, that they got the result underhanded in Brisbane, and now they strengthen the team. Obviously, begins with, Sam Burgess coming back into that side. Not only that, with the confidence and energy they'll get from that, but that was a launch pad. That has turned their season around, where now they really need to continue and piggyback off that effort levels and that level of performance and the confidence that Walker and Cook are playing with, and take that to New Zealand and get the job done. And even if New Zealand puts in a good effort, which is a total question mark, they should be too good. The Bunnies have the Roosters next week. They know they've got to be firing to even have a chance in that. And they're still fighting to make top 4. So there's so many reasons for the Bunnies to get to group together, head over to New Zealand, and they're just going in a complete opposite direction to the Warriors. This is my favourite play of the round, and I expect they'll be way too good as they launch towards the final. They are still a smoky. If things were to really go their way, you look at the form of the spine, and now Johnson's back. There's still an outside chance to win the comp, and it's got to keep going on Friday night.
And they have to win this one to make top 4. So we're going with 4 plays on the Rabbits. We're making ourselves a mechanical Rabbitohs -4 points, so we get our money back if they win by 4. Ends up being $1.80. 58% of our stake on the Rabbitohs -3.5 points. That's $1.72 in the Bet Easy Pick Your Own Line section. And 42% of our stake on the Rabbitohs -4.5 points at $1.90 on Bet365. We'll take the Warriors under 8.5 points in the first half, $1.80 on Ladbrokes and Neds. The Warriors under 18.5 points for the game, $1.80 on Ladbrokes and Neds. And the Rabbitohs race to 20 at $1.80 on Bet365.
And if I could just throw one more thing in there, so we're grabbing a bit of money on -3.5 in the alt line, a bit on -4.5. So if they win by exactly 4, money back. If they win by more than 4, we win. You'll see that this line is already 6 in places. My prediction, this line will be above 6 everywhere on Friday. So we're getting on at a great number. Another reason why we're taking it tonight.
Big call, and I do agree with you. No one's going to be betting the Warriors, I don't think, especially public. And we consider ourselves sharps, and we are on the Rabbitohs as well. I'll just float over to the comments again. Jeremy asking, I think he's asking why we don't bet the margin bets. And look, we probably would in some cases. It's just for our record, they're never really around that $1.80 to $2 mark, which just makes it easier for our record. But Absolutely. I mean, you can definitely find 1 to 12 or 13 plus bets that are value. It's just not quite as easy to find because generally those markets are a little bit less value than just a straight up line because they do take a bit more juice out of that one. What do you think, Jacob, just quickly before we move on to Broncos?
Yeah, exactly that. It's a little bit harder for people to figure out what the odds should be. They're generally not as good value. One case where I do like taking 1 to 12 if I like an underdog to get the upset, but it's quite rare that bigger underdog's going to totally blow the other side out. I don't mind grabbing an underdog 1 to 12 where you get when their head-to-head might be $3, yep. But if you can get, closer to $5 1 to 12, that's a kind of a sharp opportunity to take the margin.
Yeah, definitely. Let's move on to the Broncos laying 3.5 points, hosting the Eels. 40.5 points is the total. I have no idea what to do with this game. That's why you'll see that we don't have any best bets on it currently. The line is telling us that these two teams are equal. It's probably about right, I guess. If these two teams played on a neutral, maybe I would say the Eels are a slightly better team. You do get Blake Ferguson back, but you lose Nathan Brown. And the Broncos are, although they lost last week, that was a pretty good performance. So this is their second game at Suncorp in a row. Their equation is pretty simple for the Broncos. They win out, they will make the 8. The Eels, though, still have a fair bit to play for. I looked up the schedule for the Eels and for the teams in the top 4 currently that are ahead of them. It is not out of the question that this Eels side makes the top 4 if they win this game against the Broncos and then they play Manly next week and win that one. That's knocking another team that's in the top 4 currently out of the top 4. So this is a huge game for both teams. But I just don't have a great feel. If this was 4.5, I'd probably like the Eels. If this was Pick'em, I'd probably like the Broncos. So the line seems pretty fair to me. I will ask you, Jacob, the thing that I didn't even think about was the total just being such a critical game for both teams and both teams that have been fairly good defensively. Should it be a game that we look at the under being a nighttime game?
It is a very important game, but it's just a hard one because these two sides don't bring it every single week, and they can play some attacking footy. Geez, Darius Boyd, the stench of Boyd, getting picked in this team every week, making it close to $1 million a year. The talk that he still got 2 years left on his deal. Yep. It's got to be distracting. But if I was Seabold, why not just drop him to reserve grade? I don't really understand. I know he was Bennett's son and stuff, but now I don't see where the tie is that you have to keep him unless it's embarrassing to drop your captain because he still captains the side, right?
Sorry, I'll jump in real quickly. I don't think it's not even that he's not worth $800,000 a year. I mean, he's definitely not, but he's actually a liability. You could bring someone up from second grade that would actually be better than him.
Oh, put it this way: Turpin is suspended for 1 more week, but when Turpin's available next week, he would do a better job than Darius Boyd. We could harp on that, right? So that is definitely a weakness, this Brisbane team, but they do have strengths. And I think that they're playing pretty good footy the last month. It's been disguised by the fact that everyone they've played against has actually shown up with a big performance. Let's go back a month ago. They got flogged by the Storm. Now, everyone wanted to dump on the Broncos, but the Storm were amazing that night. The Cowboys were actually bang up for it on a Thursday night and, took it to the wire. Penrith actually weren't too bad. They were really up for that game as well. It was a huge game, and Brisbane were too good for them. And last week, as I said, Brisbane loses the game, but the Bunnies, that was one of their performances of the season. So Brisbane's a good team here. Now, you've still got TPJ suspended, right? So that's a bit of a loss. Gillette came back. I thought he was very rusty last week, but maybe he'll be better. News today, Offengawi had to leave training early with a knee injury. That's a big, significant concern to me, a guy that played Origin this year. On the Eels side, losing Nathan Brown is huge if you wanted to back them going up against this Brisbane forward pack. Fergo back is big, but the shit that he's gone through the last few weeks, and he lost 10 kilos, had was it infection or virus on top of
10 kilos? Jesus.
Yeah, and even he looked a bit gaunt on the Matty John show on Thursday. So it's he'll need to play himself a little bit back into shape. So I can't expect 100% Fergo. I think the Eels are the slightly better team, but let's not forget they already embarrassed Brisbane earlier this year. There's revenge factor.
True.
It was a cracker of a game last week at Suncorp. I expect even though Brisbane lost, the crowd will be out in force again for what should be really entertaining. And it's just Brisbane's a young team. If they get momentum, they can cover this line. On the other hand, the Eels have that real advantage in the halves. Mitchell Moses can dominate this game, and you can make a case for taking the points with the Eels too. So when you can make a case for both sides, maybe neither of them is a 60% winner.
Yeah, that's exactly right. If we don't love it, we leave it. And if we disagree, we leave it 2. Next up, the Knights laying 10.5 points, hosting the Titans. 42.5 points is the total. I don't love a side in this one. If I had to choose a side, I would probably take the Titans. The line, it does seem high to me. I mean, I think to myself, why in the fuck would I trust the Newcastle Knights after everything they've been through and the shit that they've served up the last couple of weeks? But then I think, there is a decent chance that they, like I said, with some other teams like the Warriors, are just completely done for the season. They've lost their coach. They're just going to basically give up on the season. But after serving up the most putrid plate of shit that I've ever seen last week against the Tigers, you must think that, there is definitely a chance that they come out in their last home game and want to actually put in a very good performance and just steamroll this Titans side. So, there's parts of me that just don't want to take the Knights altogether. There's parts of me that think that they will show up. On the Titans side, yes, they put in a decent performance for a half last week, but then got steamrolled in the second half. But that's what the Storm can do to you. You get Jared Wallace starting, which I think is good, and you've got Ash Taylor that might come into the team, which I think is, certainly helps as well. If anything, I think this is a stone cold over. You've got a Saturday day game at 3 p.m. It's going to be nice and sunny there in Newcastle. You've got a Titans team that is completely out of it. They're going to want to throw it around a little bit. And as we've seen, when they give up, they'll leak points. But even if they don't give up, like against the Dragons, they let in 40 when they put in a decent effort. On the Knights side, yes, they could show up and just steamroll the Titans, like I said. But there's also, the fact that even if the Knights show up and play hard, which there's a chance that they don't, but if they do, I still think that their defense is suspect. Two teams that I've seen suspect defense even when they're trying their hardest, and if they're not giving 100%, I think that these two teams could leak even more points. So even though it's a high-ish total, 42.5, those are totals that we have been seeing for daytime Saturday games, and I think that these two teams could score 60 points in this one.
Okay, the reason the over didn't jump out at me is the Titans, actually did try hard against the Storm last week, held the Storm to 24. Philip Sammy's chase down, maybe they can kind of work off the back of that, of showing spirit. And the Knights aren't the Storm in terms of scoring points. For the Knights, they conceded over 40 last week. They're not the Storm either. But they conceded 40 last week. They've got to come out and show effort. That's got to start defensively as well. And this is my kind of read on the game, is that the Knights fans have been through a lot, but they've been turning out in the really bad times and the back-to-back wooden spoon times. And Knights fans have been so loyal, but they're shattered right now. And they're so disappointed. They're hurting. And Mitchell Pearce came out and took all the responsibility and said, it's not the coach, it's not distractions, it's not excuses, it's on the players to perform. I think the fact that they come home and and the crowd's going to be turning out again, they owe them a good performance. Also, the fact that Brownie might have lost the locker room. He was a bit snarly at the end. Now he's out of there. You almost wonder if it's an FU to Brownie if they come out and put out a good performance. I could totally see that. With the Titans, there haven't been many games in the back end of the season they would have even gone in believing they could win. This is one where they could probably talk themselves into their chances. Well, if they think they could win, it could actually be an ugly game where two shitty teams both think they can win and it doesn't necessarily go over. But we'll see if we can get a good line. But yeah, it's hard to predict. On one hand, I can understand why this line is into double digits because the Knights could kind of take out their frustrations from last week and try and end on a minor positive note. Guys like Callum Ponga with a little bit of a point to prove. He's basically never copped criticism in his whole career, but he has copped a bit in the last fortnight. So I could see it going that way. But also, if the Titans play similar to they did against the Storm and they're catching double digits, then that would be a decent line as well.
Yeah, another one of those games where you can talk yourself into either side pretty much, and when we can do that, we generally leave the game. An absolute cracker on Saturday afternoon. Manly plus 2.5 points, hosting the Storm. 38.5 points is the total. Very, very interesting one. I mean, we've said for a number of weeks that the Storm have the number one seed wrapped up, but Manly still fighting tooth and nail for a top 4 spot. Very, very, very impressive win over the Raiders last week. As we said, we were on them last week, and just a gritty performance against a Raiders side that has not played pretty much one bad game all season long. Give me Manly at home here. Plus 2.5. I know what I'm getting with Manly. I know that they're coming off that rough, tough win against the Raiders. But look, both teams are off short turnarounds here. Brookvale is historically the number one home field advantage in the comp. They're going to be hungry. I know what I'm getting. I know I'm getting 100% from Manly. Look, I'm probably getting 100% from the Storm as well, but there's only 2 weeks to go now. I get that they have put in for the last few weeks, but now they've well and truly wrapped up that number one seed. Yes, sure, they probably won't rest any players, but I just look at this line and it's 2.5, and Manly are at home, and historically Brookvale has been worth, almost 3.5 points. So I don't know if the Storm are a full converted try better than Manly. So I know it's so tough to go against this Storm team because they are a juggernaut, and if they are on and Manly's slightly off, the Storm will win this one. But I just think catching Manly in a must-win, hungry spot at home is the way to go here. In terms of the total, I saw a comment float through. I swear I looked at the weather report and it said it was going to be fine around the Sydney area on Saturday, but someone said it's going to be raining. So I'll have to recheck that, but definitely if it was raining, I'd be leaning towards the under 38.5 in this game. Two very, very elite defenses.
Yeah, look, if you take the Storm, you kind of know what you're going to get. And I know that we've alluded to during the Origin period, would this be a week they'd rest players? They're well ahead on the ladder. They're not desperate. But the fact of the matter is 18 wins out of 22 games and the 4 losses by a combined 8 points. And if you go and look at each of the 4 losses, they were all by a very narrow margin. They could have won the lot. So this team is relentless. They bring it every week. Yes. Even when they're off the boil, they're still close. And they're pretty close to full strength. I mean, you can put a bow on this and tell me what you believe their best spine is. But for now, they're trialling out Pappenhausen as a full-time fullback, Jerome Hughes in the halves, which gives you a more deadly ball runner in the halves. They're sacrificing the playmaking.
Pappenhausen scares me every time he touches the fucking ball.
Oh, yeah. He always looks like he's going to make a line break too. So they're going with that. This is their last test before the finals because they play at home to the Cowboys next week. And let's be honest, last week was a training run against the Titans. And they mucked around for the first half. They've been waiting for this one. Let's not forget a month ago, 5 weeks ago, Manly went and got him at Amy Park in a classic that went 90 minutes, right, with the Cherry Evans field goal. So revenge factor, Storm don't like losing to the same team twice in a season. So that's the case that the Storm gets up for this. But if you're taking the Storm, you are kind of selling Manly a bit short because Manly's at home. Manly's done a lot, especially in recent weeks, to show that they are elite. Now, losing Joel Thompson, I believe broken arm, that's a big loss. But I guess they get Curtis Sirinen, who's been out about 2 or 3 weeks. That covers that up a bit. Moses Sully was named, but I'll be surprised. He copped an injury on Sunday as well. I don't know if he's going to play. Brad Parker's dealing with an injury. He's in the reserve. So that could leave a hole in the centres. You never know if they've got to even bring Lachlan Croker into the team and slot Dylan Walker and reshuffle. So there's a few concerns against the Seagulls. Ultimately, I think this will be a cracker of a game. I expect both teams to be bang up for it. I recall, I think it was last season, during Origin period, the Storm played Manly at Brookie. Manly were not as good last year. The Storm, as always, were right there at minor premiership. I know they missed out by points difference. I think the Storm rested all their Origin players, still went and won at Brookvale, and it was a crazy game. And I can't remember the finer details. They are the best
team. If you looked back historically, it's got to be if the Storm rest all their players or during Origin period when key players are out, they do the best out of any team, I swear. It's just they're so well coached. Is,
the Storm could miss 6 players for Origin, rest all 6, and still win a game.
Yeah.
And you see other teams will lose a game when they are missing 1 player, and 100%. They'll make an excuse, we didn't have the combinations because I had a different 5/8 in there. It does 100%. Go to show Bellamy's a genius. But my point was as well, so Storm beat Manly at Brookie last year, and I know there was a lot of contentious bullshit in that game, and I'm sure a few calls went against Manly. I recall that we bet on Manly plus the points. I think they covered, but they didn't win, and they should have won. There's revenge there as well. So I'm not sure which way to go. You've probably talked me around to the side to be on is Manly. You did say something that they both have the same turnaround, but it's a big difference between playing game in Canberra than what the Storm played at home to the Titans. So I'm a little worried, are the Seagulls worn out? But I also think this line may continue to trickle up. We want to wait on the news that I said about Sully, and maybe if it gets to 4 or above, then I would be on board with you with the mighty Seagulls.
Yeah, I see a comment flowing in, and I'll flick it over to you as well, Jacob. Tony, good old Tony Roberts, reckons the public will be on the Storm. Do you think that is the case? I get that the Storm, are historically a very public team, but after the public just watched Manly beat the Raiders on, the Sunday late game that everyone watches, and that's the last game that they saw for the round, do you really think that the public's going to be eager to jump all over the Storm?
In a way, I actually do. I think that you don't go broke betting on the Storm. And this line was 2 a few days ago. It's now 2.5. So it does seem to be trickling that way. And I feel like if you wanted the Storm, you would grab them now. If you want Manly, you would wait. So I'm even kind of predicting the market may move that way.
Yep, fair call. Let's move on to the next game. It's the Roosters laying 12.5 points hosting the Panthers. 38.5 points is the total. Oh, it is so ugly, but I actually like the Panthers here. I really think that this line is just a few points too high. Yes, the Roosters are an absolute juggernaut, and we have been burnt many, many times before going against this Roosters team because they are the best team in the comp when they're on, when their roster is fully healthy, and they do get Latrell back for this one. But then I thought, look, I'll just look at the ladder and see what's going on here. The Roosters are basically locked into number 2 spot. Yes, sure, they'll still probably put in a good effort here against a good team that they beat earlier in the season, correct? Or actually, the Panthers. Did the Panthers beat them in a close one? But then I looked at the Panthers and I thought, are they actually completely out of this at the moment? And, they've got 3 teams that they kind of, they have ahead of them in the Sharks, the Broncos, and the Tigers. They have to overtake 2 of those 3 to make the finals. All of those three teams, the Sharks, the Broncos, and the Tigers, all of them could lose this round. Sorry, let me just see here. Oh, and the Panthers, the Tigers play the Sharks next week, so one of those 2 teams has to lose. So I was just looking at it in that regard.
And the Panthers play the Knights, very winnable.
Correct, yeah. So I was just looking at that, and I just thought to myself, look, if the Panthers have absolutely no chance of making the 8, I don't love them here. But they do have a very realistic chance if they win out to make the 8. This team is still very, very good on paper. I know that they were terrible last week. The halves just did not show up. But really, 12.5 points. I get it's, being played at the SCG. That is the home ground for the Roosters. But really, these are 2 Sydney teams. So I'll probably only give 1.5 points here for home field. Or maybe even 2 if you want to call it that. When we're saying teams are 10 points, 10.5 points better than other teams, that's nearly the best team in the comp versus the worst team in the comp. So I just think that if the Panthers have not given up on the season, which I trust that they haven't, then they are too good to be catching over 2 converted tries against this Roosters team. And really, the Roosters are going to have to win this game. They're going to have to score 3 more tries than the Panthers to cover this because Cleary is a much, much better goal kicker than Latrell. So I just think that, if I am getting a decent effort from the Panthers here, I think that this 12.5 is just too high.
And remind me, did we end up getting?
We took 6.5 first half, and okay. Now I'm starting to doubt myself because Tony just said the line's gone to 14.5, which doesn't surprise me necessarily, but fuck me. Anyway.
And I'm going to explain why
we wouldn't have got 8.5 first half anyway. So I think we're fine with the 6.5.
But look. Here's a few reasons why I don't feel as confident about Penrith as you. Latrell Mitchell, you mentioned it before, so he's back.
Yes.
I think he's warming up for the finals. Cordner is in the reserves.
I had to twist Jacob's arm to take this one. So
touch and go. But if Cordner comes back, that is a boost. We've seen how well they've played even without him. Revenge is a real thing. Penrith beat the Roosters during the Origin period earlier this year. I think they 0-1. Really like the way Verrills is playing at 9, and it's opened up them to allow to play Victor the Inflictor at lock, and that has improved them too. TKO got back into this team last week. Isaiah Yeo is out. He is an important part of this Panthers side and one of their more experienced players out on an edge. That's going to be an issue. They're debuting another bloke. How many players have debuted for the Panthers this year? I think they've used more players than any other team. What was ominous to me, an interview I saw with Luke Keary after they won 2 games in a row by 30-plus points, talking how unsatisfied they were that they did not put together 80-minute performances, referring to the fact that they lost the second half to the Dragons, that they only beat the Warriors by a try first half. When you're winning by more than 30 and you're saying you only played half the game, I'm worried that they're going to be very, ruthless in this one. Penrith's season is absolutely alive. It will be alive right up until they're down 12-0 in the first half against the Roosters, and then they will give up if that happens. I spoke to you they're a young side, they're a confident side. If they catch a couple breaks, if they score a try for bomb early or something, and they get confidence, they can build off that. We saw how they upset the Sharks. But if they get behind, like they did against Brisbane and North Queensland, they do have lapses and they do drop their heads, and no one will make you pay like the Roosters do. Mansour is still injured as well. That's like another, kind of senior player on this side. So these are the reasons why, although the line sounds like it's too high, we've seen what the Roosters are doing to teams So let's just wait and see how high it really gets. If it gets to a point where we've got to take it. But I feel like if you're going to play Penrith, you may as well play them in the first half, because if the first half goes bad, the second will be worse.
Indeed, and that's what we have done for now. We've just got the one best bet for now. It's Panthers plus 6.5 points in the first half. That one is $1.84 on Unibet, because like Jacob said, if they're going to have a chance to cover the full game line, they have to be close at halftime. Next up, another cracker of a game. The Sharks plus 1.5 points at home, hosting the Raiders. 42.5 points here is the total. I like the Sharks in this one. I think that, although you can argue that the Raiders are, if you look at their body of work throughout the season as a whole, yes, they have been the better team, for sure, without a shadow of a doubt. And, they're probably going to make the top 4 here. I don't think so. I think they're going to actually lose this game to the Sharkies. I think that although the Sharks have been playing some decent football as of late, I still think that, a lot of people that got burned earlier on in the season and during the season, when the Sharks had some lulls and they weren't fully healthy, they haven't been fully healthy for most of the season. They've had various players out, all over the place. And so, their season stats and their season win-loss is very, very different to what this team is, as they're currently constructed. I mean, they're pretty much fully healthy. They're just missing Fecky, but the Raiders are missing BJ Leilua as well. They're coming off that grind against Manly, and unlike this one, the Sharks get, 1 or 2 extra days rest than the Raiders. Look, I'm not saying that this isn't a bet, necessarily against the Raiders. I think that they have shown all season long that they have put in solid effort after solid effort, but I think the spot here, coming off that late Sunday game, an absolute grind, now having to travel to Shark Park, which is a fairly strong home field advantage, I don't necessarily think that the Sharks should actually be underdogs in this game. This line is trying to tell me that the Raiders are 4 points better than the Sharks. I do not think that is the case, and I think, you've got the Sharks off a much easier game than the Raiders played last week, plus extra rest. So I would take the Sharks in this spot, but you do like, or have at least a lean to the Raiders, Jacob.
And that's why you guys can see there's no best bets. We're head-to-head, in fact. I think you would have been willing to pull the trigger on some Sharks plays. I actually like the Raiders. You've just made the case for the Sharks. I guess I could add a point that helps your case. The Raiders have come off a bloody rough, like a tough run of opponents, haven't they? Who have they played recently? When you consider the game wasn't
Roosters,
tough, but they had to fly over to New Zealand. They played Roosters, Storm, and Manly. It doesn't get much more grueling than that. Okay, but Ricky seems to have the troops up every week, especially off a loss. So I expect them to be firing. You said that the Sharks are fully or close to fully healthy. Remember, Moylan is still out too.
That's true, yeah.
And I think that does shift the balance to the outside backs of the Raiders. Leilua out as well, suspended, but he only has been back for a game. Really, they were rolling along just fine with Simerson on the wing there and Kotrick, in the form that got him at Blues jersey. And I think he does a job at centre for him. I look at in the halves, a guy like Whiten having the best season of his career. He played Origin as well. Caesar, since he's gotten back in the side, I actually give the edge. Even though Johnson has looked scary at moments, I like the edge. And I think Hodgson is such a big key in this game. Like the way that a lot of the number 9s are playing in the competition right now and controlling games, like obviously Cook and Smith, but Hodgson right there too. And the Sharks have a strong forward pack, but I think that all these pommies in the Raiders forward pack can handle them. I think that, the completely British back row of the Raiders on the edges can handle what guys like Wade Graham are going to be throwing at them. I actually think Ricky Stewart can coach a better game than what Johnny Morris. I think this will be the ultimate test of Johnny Morris's first season, coming up with a game plan to beat this ruthless Raiders side. All in all, I just see more edges across the park to the Raiders, and I know they could be a little bit more tired, but they're fighting for top 4 just as much as the Sharks are fighting for top 8. So I think it's going to be a cracking game, and push come to shove, I believe the Raiders would win this one. So you can still get the Raiders at $1.80, and that was my reason for going that way. But I see the case you make for taking the Sharks as a small underdog at home as well. Should be a good game.
Should be an absolute cracker, and we're lucky as football fans, honestly, to have the ladder shake out in the way that, you still have so many top 4 games, games between top 4 teams like Manly and the Storm, Sharks and the Raiders, teams fighting for top 4 spots, top 8 spots, because it's not always like that every year. So certainly one of the more exciting runs to the finals that we've seen in a few years, in my opinion. Last game of the round, the Dragons plus 2 points, hosting the Tigers, 39.5 points is the total. I looked at this line and I said, all right, the Dragons at home, they're going to put in a good effort in their last home game here. But then I looked a little bit closer, and the game's is not at Jubilee. It's at the SCG, so it's not a true home field advantage for the Dragons. Like you said when we chatted earlier, Jacob, it's almost neutral venue, and who knows if there might be even more Tigers fans at the SCG than Dragons fans, especially because the Tigers are still in the hunt for the 8. So that's the way I saw it. I said to myself, look, the Tigers probably win this game. The only way that they don't is if the Dragons really show up, fire up, and put in an absolutely great performance. Because I know what I'm getting from the Tigers. I know that I'm getting a full 80-minute performance from a solid team that is still fighting for a top 8 spot. Whereas on the Dragons side, I am not sure what I'm getting. I could get a flat Dragons that just does not show up, and I could get a Dragons side that absolutely shows up. But the thing is, I'm much more confident of them showing up at Jubilee than I am at the SCG. So I just feel much more confident in the Tigers in this one. And although they're favourites, this is basically a neutral venue game. And I not only think that the Tigers are the better team than the Dragons, but I also think that they just have way more to play for, and I'm much more confident that I'm getting a full 80-minute, 100% performance out of the Tigers. So I think we have to take them.
And not just that, the Tigers are actually underrated. Like Corey Thompson, no one would, throws his name in there as the best, fullbacks in the comp, but he's not that far off. He's bloody good fullback. Benji Marshall has the fountain of youth. I thought he was washed up 5 years ago, maybe longer, when he played for St. George. He's been up and played for Brisbane and played multiple seasons for Tigers. And said he is still one of the best players on the field when he plays. Like, he is a general. And Ryan Madison, is a ball-playing back rower who can help and spell them and play in the halves with Brooks, who can be a dominant half. And that allows Benji to play a bit of 9, as he did last week to a really high level, which covers the loss of Farah. It's a gritty forward pack. The Tigers are a side that defends pretty stoutly and doesn't, give you too much. Yeah, I believe they're definitely going to win this game, and that is going to put them in a position to make the finals. There's we spoke about all the maths and all the different variables. There's a possibility that winning on Sunday could actually get them enough points to get them in. Yep. But at the very least, what they know is if they win this game on Sunday, they push their season to round 25, home game Leichhardt against the Sharks. And that's going to be a cracker for them. And their goal the whole year, a side that not many people picked to make the 8, they believed they could do it. And so now here is their opportunity. I'm surprised the Tigers are close to 50-50, in the betting markets in this game, because to me, I feel pretty confident they'll be too good for the Dragons, who's, after last week, I think, although there's talent on their side, they're ready for this season to end. There's people calling for Mary's head. So it's ugly times for the Dragons, and it's really exciting times for West.
Yeah, definitely. One thing that we didn't add is Ben Hunt has been named on the reserves for this one, but we were chatting about this earlier, Jacob, and it's like, even if he does play, we still like the Tigers. But on the other hand, we're saying, like, why would you put him in? Your season is over. Stuff could happen, injuries, etc., all that kind of stuff. So, look, if Ben Hunt doesn't play, it is a plus. As much as everyone likes to heap shit on him, it is a plus for the Tigers if he doesn't play. But even if he does, we still think the Tigers get the job done.
Well, the other issue they've got is, like, what position would they slot him in at? Because is it going to be at the expense of Tristan Saylor, who you've just debuted last week? He did well. He's potentially your future number 1 because Widdop won't be there next year. So you've got to let the kid play again. He's been named at 1. So if he's playing at 1, what position does Hunt come in and play?
Yeah,
because they got McInnes, got Corey Norman's going to be there next year. Yep. So they don't, and that's been their problem all year. They didn't know who their best spine was.
You'd have to drop Saylor, I think.
It seemed like a shame to do that.
Yeah.
Because if anything, all they've got left to play for now is to give some new kids some experience. You'd like to think anyway. That's it. The Dragons aren't a side I want to bet on this weekend.
No, 100%. So we've got 4 best bets as of now. We're taking the Tigers minus 1.5 points for the game. That one's $1.90 on Sportsbet. Staying on Sportsbet, we've got the Tigers to win the first half. That's $1.80. We're taking the Tigers race to 10 points. That's $1.80 on Ladbrokes and on Neds. And we're taking the Tigers race to 15 points. That is $1.83 on Bet365. And that's going to wrap it, guys. I know not that many.
And maybe I'll just say one more thing about those best bets. Just to wrap what I said at the top of the show, like, we look through every game. We try and tell you every bet that wins more than 60% of the time, in our opinion. Now, the Tigers to be the first team to score 10 and the Tigers to win the first half. Now, it doesn't take a genius to figure out those two are very correlated.
Right.
If one happens, the other one probably happens. So, I mean, we are not telling people they have to bet each and every bet and bet them all. Those are quite similar bets, but we're just giving them all out because people who watch us for long enough also know the odds can move, the markets can move. So we try and give out as many bets as we can. If we give out 6 or 7 bets on a game that like this one or whatever we've given out 4 or 5 where they're all obviously involved the Tigers winning, you don't have to take them all. You can take 1 or 2 of them, put a little more on that. But that's just an explanation. Some people think that all of our best bets is like a staking plan or a get-rich plan, but we're just trying to point out the value as we see it.
Yeah, exactly right. And at the very bare minimum, if you're listening to us and you hear that we like a side like the Tigers, and let's say all of those bets are gone for whatever reason, people have jumped on and within 5 minutes they're all gone. I think the best is not to have a sulk. I think that it's very easy to just get all your apps out, and like we've said, you should have at least 5 or 6 betting apps. Just look for the best price for the Tigers to win the game. Boom. Put your bet on whatever it is, 10, 20, $50. And same with anything else. If we're giving out different different bets, maybe there's 5 or whatever, and you can't get any of the bets that we got on. The very basic that you can do is go look at your 5 apps, see which one has the best line, and just bet it. And you'll be doing all right if you do that and get the best price out in the market for a certain market on a side that we like. You will win long term.
To give a really quick example of that, we're taking Tigers -1.5, $1.90. If you listen to this on Saturday or Sunday, it's not -1.5, it's moved to -2.5. Hey, the Tigers to win the game at $1.75.
Oh, yeah.
Or if it's $1.70 by Sunday.
Yep.
If you get the best price in the market, hey, that's still a good bet. Obviously, we still agree with that side. So that's an example of what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly right. And to piggyback off that, you got to use your brain as a punter as well. We're not going to tell you exactly what to bet on everything, but it's if you see $1.76 on the Tigers and it's $1.75 on Bet365, but if the game goes to extra time, you can't lose, you got to think of those little things as well. So you got to do a little bit of work yourself. We'll give you the bets that we, like Jacob said, that are value and the sides that we like, and sometimes you do have to do a little bit of work yourself. But that's the fun part, It's like bargaining with a person on a Bali beach. You feel good about yourself when you get the shirt for $5 instead of $20. Likewise, you feel good about yourself when you find the best price/line in the marketplace. That's going to do it for week 24, guys. Hopefully we'll keep it rolling. I don't know if I'll do a tennis multi. I feel burned after I picked the $3 dog and, actually won the $1.08 loss, and we thought that would be the only losing leg, but no, 4 more legs lost. So I think I'm burnt for now, but maybe we'll continue on. But for yourselves, certainly keep putting on those Bet365 multis for the US Open. They are good value. We will be releasing not only these best bets that we've given out during the pod tomorrow in the Tripod app, but we will also be releasing any additional bets that we do give out along with multis. We'll have 5 or 6 multis over the weekend. We did quite well on the multis last week, Jacob. Two $7 winners actually over the weekend, so that's boosted up the multi-profit. Anything else you wanted to add or we need to add before we get out of here?
That's more than enough. Looking forward to the penultimate regular season round.
That is it, 43 minutes. That will absolutely do us. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and we will see you after the late Sunday game to recap round 24. We'll catch you then.